Hello to the few of you that are watching this video. It's only my second one. I didn't know if I was ever going to do another one of these. My first was for Noble Records 750 subscribers contest, and I've met Dylan. We're from the same area, and I've been to a lot of his, or a few of his record pop-ups, and so I started following him on YouTube, and I decided to do an entry into that contest, and thought it would just be a one-off thing, but then I saw this vinyl tag going around, and it's kind of encouraged me to maybe do another one. When there are questions to kind of follow, it's easier to do this than trying to think of a topic on your own or just showing vinyl finds or whatever. And but I'm interested in this kind of this direction, so I decided to do one. My name is John. I go by the Digital Gramophone on YouTube and Instagram. That comes from what I named a blog of mine that I occasionally write entries on. It's nothing huge. It's just for me. It's just kind of a hobby that I honestly haven't really kept up very well. You know, there's a million people like that with blogs, but whatever. Best vinyl finds of 2018. This one, I didn't know anything about this band. When I saw this cover though, I thought it might be something that I would like. I like a lot of the 60s, mid to late 60s blues rock, and that's kind of what this seemed like it might be. It's kind of got a little bit more of a psychedelic cover, but the band is Aum. Guess that's how you pronounce it, A-U-M. The album's called Blues Vibes. I've looked them up since I picked this up. They were a band from San Francisco. They only put out 2 albums, both of them in 1969. This one was the second one. I was completely prepared to bring this home and hate it and take it back or try to sell it to somebody else. Instead, it is really good. Really, really good. It's got an edge to it. The play is raw, and it's got like at times like and I don't know if it's because maybe they just didn't have the budget for studio time and so they couldn't do multiple takes or whatever, but there's like a rawness and a technical lack of preciseness that I enjoy. I don't know. It's really good, and they have a sound completely all their own. And I would say it leans more towards kind of like John Mayall, stuff that's more faithful to the blues, traditional blues, and less like Cream, that's, you know, more into goes down a psychedelic route. But it's a really good album. Really good album. Was glad to find that. I don't know how easy it is to find. I don't know if anybody knows more about this. Please let me know in the comments below. Can't believe I just used that phrase. And please let me know in the comments below. It's my second video. Anyway, this is the last one that I'm going to talk about. I'm a big fan of the band Low. The slowcore alternative indie band from Minnesota. If you count CDs with my vinyl, I have all their studio albums, but I was missing 3 on vinyl. The first one from 1994, I Could Live in Hope. That one's really hard to find and very expensive online. And then the one from 2002, Trust. You can get it pretty easily, and I don't know why I haven't gotten around to it. I guess, I don't know. I kind of played it out when it first came out, but came across this one. This is their second, Long Division, from 1995. I found this at my local record store, Lunchbox Records. This one and the first album, actually the first few albums, were reissued on vinyl for the first time in 2011, and that's one of these. And this one can cost you a pretty penny online too. I was able to pick this up for 20 bucks at Lunchbox. Glad to find that one. Okay, so I got my video into my computer and realized that I forgot to answer the second question. So that explains the change of clothes. The second one was about shout outs to the VC community, people that you feel deserve more subscribers. Because this is really only like my second video and I'm really new to this, I don't really feel qualified to say, you know, as far as I can tell so far, I don't feel like if you have 50 subscribers or 2,000, I don't think anybody deserves more than, you know, than anybody else. Who knows why certain people have more than others. I've watched a lot and I don't really feel like, and I mean this, I don't really feel like anybody's channel is better than anybody else's, really. I think that everybody has their own thing that they bring, and you know, that's what it's all about. So anyway, it's kind of a nice, safe, political answer, isn't it? But I'll just say quickly the people that I watch most are Tunes from the Man Cave, Tales from the Crate, not in any particular order, Noble Records, Omaha Introvert, Matt Sands, and Sam the Psych Professor. Those guys are kind of goofy in a good way. I could watch them talk about polka. I just think they're funny. But I really enjoy their channel. Bo, who is in Seattle, what's his handle? Earhead6, I think. Jeff Kempen, the Vinyl Verse, Steve Carlson, I just recently discovered because a lot of you have talked about him, and he seems like a really genuine, nice dude. I like his. I watched his Vinyl Tag. It was great. But yeah, I'm probably forgetting a couple, and so I'm looking forward to finding more videos and getting a little bit more involved in the VC myself. So yeah, so there's that. What holes are you looking to fill in your collection? So the last couple of years, I've really kind of focused hard on a lot of Atlantic and Stax, like R&B albums. I had like a checklist of kind of must-haves, and I was even willing to spend, because some of them can cost a pretty penny, I was willing to spend $40 or $50 on them if they were in good condition, depending on what the album was. And you know, I did that on a few. You know, this is another one. This is one of my favorites, Bound to Happen by William Bell. He's kind of one of the more overlooked artists on that Stax and Atlantic roster. But I'd love to get more of that stuff, kind of fill in those holes. Here's a classic rock band that I don't have anything by, and I don't know why, and I just never have gotten around to them. But I feel like I need to give some attention to the Guess Who, and I don't know why I never have. And so I'm going to keep them in the forefront of my mind over the next year or so, and like, you know, check the used bins for their stuff. I'm sure that it's not, I wouldn't think it would be that hard to find, would it be? I don't know. A cheap album that's really good. I have a few of these, but I think everybody does. But I wanted to highlight this. Nick Lowe and his Cowboy Outfit. This came out in 1984. It's a Nick Lowe album. It's very much in his style of songwriting and the pub rock kind of sound, like his later 70s albums. But there is a stronger country influence on here, and there's some nice Tex-Mex sounds, you know, probably influenced by like Sir Douglas Quintet, bands like that. But it's a really good album. I picked it up for like $3 or $4 at a used bin, and I'm sure you could probably even get it for that online. So yeah, I highly recommend that one. It's a really good album. Your favorite side project? Do super groups count? Because my favorite would be the New Pornographers. I don't know if they really count though as a side project, because they have this band has an extensive discography, and they've probably even gained more fans for this project than their original solo projects. But AC Newman, Dan Bejar, who's of course under Destroyer, and then Nico Case. But yeah, the New Pornographers, that's a pretty good one. But if that doesn't count, I'm a big Steve Winwood fan, and this year I was able to pick this up. Ayakita, I think that's how you pronounce it. The Third World. This is an Afro rock album. He was in a trio with these two guys that I don't know too much about, but this was recorded in '73. We all know Steve Winwood was in another side project, a super group that we should all know and love. An album that I have with a very controversial cover. But I wanted to mention this one because I think this is a really neat album. A song from an artist or band that is uncharacteristic of their sound. So I immediately thought of Neil Young's Geffen period. And I don't have some of those albums. Was Trans in the Geffen period, or I can't remember for sure, but I think it was. And then like the Rockabilly album, like I don't have that one. But I do have this one, Old Ways, from 1985, and it's not like a huge departure for Neil, because we all know that he has a country and kind of folk influence on a lot of his work, but this is a really straightforward country album. And so I don't know, I would say it's a slight departure. I know that it was yet another one that Geffen was not happy with, but I think it's a gorgeous album. And I was able to pick it up sealed in a used bin, but I opened it because it deserved to be listened to. But that's a really good Neil Young album that a lot of people overlook. The last album you purchased. So when I go to the record store, I don't really get a single album, and I usually pick up 3 or 4. Much to my wife's disappointment, but oh well. Anyway, when my last trip, I focused on some albums that I kind of slept on during 2018, and they were on either like critics' top 10 lists, or friends recommended them, or they were on some friends' playlists for 2018 or whatever. And this is Boy Genius. This is Lucy Dacus, Phoebe Bridgers, and Julian Baker. I, upon first listen, thought this album was instantly more satisfying than any of their solo efforts. I don't know why, and not that their solo efforts are bad. I just feel like this album just immediately hit with me, and it's really beautiful. It's just an EP. It's only 6 tracks, but really, really good. And then this one, Courtney Marie Andrews, May Your Kindness Remain. Gorgeous voice. Linda Ronstadt, Emmylou Harris, gorgeous kind of voice. Man, she has some pipes. And I'd never really listened to any of her other stuff. This album was constantly referred to by a lot of other artists that I already listened to, that are kind of in this same scene or genre. This is a country album, but Americana, whatever you want to call it these days. But this is a beautiful album. It's a slow burner for sure, but if you're in the right mood, right time of day, really good. I recommend that one. A great album with a bad cover. Guided by Voices, Do the Collapse. It's a really good album. This was the period when Guided by Voices was kind of abandoning a little bit of their lo-fi recording style and upping the production quality a good bit. Rick Ocasek produced this album, which should tell you a lot. But anyway, it's a really good album. Terrible cover. If I didn't know this was Guided by Voices, there's no way. If I didn't know who Guided by Voices was, there's no way I would pick this up. I mean, that's such a knee-jerk reaction to the title. It's like a crushed car collapse, whatever. So, bad album with a good cover. Over the last 2 or 3 years, I have really worked hard to kind of let go of stuff that I was either disappointed in or that I just really didn't enjoy. Albums that I just, were bad. I don't really have anything on my shelves anymore that I consider bad. And so the best thing that I could come up with was this Belle and Sebastian's Girls in Peacetime Want to Dance. This is not a bad album. There are some really good songs on it, but it's not one of their best. But this might be my favorite cover of theirs ever. And I have a lot of their albums going back to the beginning. And they always have the same aesthetic, this kind of retro photography, images that tell a story on themselves. And this is again a classic example of a great album cover by this band. But just this album is just not as good as the cover. I'll put it that way. It's not a bad album, and I'm kind of failing at fighting my completist nature by probably holding on to this one, to be completely honest. But still, not a bad album, but not as good as the cover. That's the best I could do for that one. A blues album. Skip James. This is called Greatest of the Delta Blues Singers. Skip James was one of those artists like Mississippi John Hurt that recorded songs and albums in the late 20s, early 30s, but just wasn't very successful selling those records. And so they both took long hiatus, stepped away from recording careers. In the 60s, they were kind of rediscovered by blues revivalists and blues enthusiasts, and so they were given a chance again to go into the studio. This is Skip James, recorded this in 1964. It was released in 65. His voice is not as strong as his early recordings, but his finger picking style is still just as good as it ever was. And because his voice is kind of weaker, it kind of adds to the haunting kind of quality of his sound, and it just gives a shiver down my spine when I listen to it in a good way. This is a really good album. I feel very fortunate to have found this in a record store, original press from '65. Really good. Skip James. An earworm song. So, I've talked about this in my previous video, so I won't go into it too long, but my son is obsessed with the Beach Boys. And I couldn't really think of an earworm song for me personally, but just recently, because of his obsession, we have to hear a few songs all the time. One of those is I Get Around by the Beach Boys. So I had bought this album for him for Christmas along with Beach Boys Today, and wrapped him up for him and let him open it, and he was ecstatic. But he's not, he's only 3, so he's not ready for a record player yet.
Yay! It's Beach Boys!
That's right.
Look and see. It's in the front.
Look, it's Beach Boys!
Yeah. Oh my goodness. 2 Beach Boy
Look,
records.
there's 2 Beach Boys records we can play later. So I'm going to hold on these till he's a little older. But yeah, I Get Around, total earworm. My wife and I find ourselves kind of humming it randomly. And we're like, God, what has happened? But anyway, not that it's a bad song. I love the Beach Boys. It's just, you know how earworm works. Anyway, a historically important artist. So, this one was kind of difficult because if you think about it, all of our record collections have, on our shelves, we have historical documents. So you could pick just about anybody if you wanted to. And so I didn't know where to go with this. The only thing I could think of, I got this box set in some boxes of records that were given to me by a coworker back around 2003 or 2004. He gave me like 500 albums. And I probably only kept about a fourth of them. And I really kind of want that back. But anyway, nonetheless, getting on a tangent. This was in there. I kept this. This is a really good box set. It's called American Folk Singers and Balladeers. It was kind of like part of like a monthly subscription thing. You know how Time Life used to have those CDs and stuff? I guess this was like the classics record library. But everybody's on this thing from the early 60s folk scene. Just mentioned Mississippi John Hurt's on here, Odetta, Rambling Jack Elliott, Mike Seeger, the Weavers with Pete Seeger and Doc Watson, Lester Flatt, Earl Scruggs, Maybelle Carter, Doc Watson. I mean, the list goes on and on. Joan Baez, did I say her already? Maybelle Carter. It's just really good collection of early folk. So it's kind of like a history book in itself. And yeah, so that's a a lot of historically important artists in one package. An album you own because of your parents. This is straight from a parent's collection. James Taylor. This is his debut album on Apple Records. My dad is from Eastern North Carolina. James Taylor is from Eastern North Carolina. So I think that's why he was always kind of a big fan of his. And I've got a lot of other records from my parents' collection, probably somewhere around 20 or so, 15 to 20. That's not a lot, but you know, this is one of my faves. Best dollar bin find. I don't really go in dollar bins. I haven't been in dollar bins in ages. I don't do it anymore. I know some people think it's fun, and I can see that. But I'm a little bit more direct in my when I buy records. I kind of know what I want, and I just go get it. But this one, I know I got it for at the most $2. It might have even been $1. Joe Jackson's Look Sharp from 1979. Just a good rock and roll album, you know. Favorite double album? This was easy, because this is also my favorite album from the 1980s, period. Sign of the Times by Prince. Just, has always been my favorite Prince album since I heard it. And I got to it later, much later than Purple Rain. Purple Rain's from my childhood, but like this one I didn't even get to probably until I was like in college. And as soon as I did, whoo, just a complete, this is a masterpiece. And they're supposed to remaster it like they did Purple Rain. Those Purple Rain remasters are incredible. And so I'm hoping this gets the same treatment. Because even though I think this sounds really good as it is, I've always wanted a little more oomph in the bass, especially. But yeah, Sign of the Times by Prince. An album you learned about from the VC in the last year. Tunes from the Man Cave. Chris at Tunes from the Man Cave. real jazz nut. I mean, he's into other stuff too, but recently just a lot what he talks about is jazz. Has a real passion for it. And he did this one video that was kind of like, so you want to get into jazz, and I'm gonna, here's some pointers or whatever. And I've been into jazz. I kind of had a jazz phase back in college. I really got into like a lot of fusion stuff, like later Donald Byrd, like Weather Report, Jaco Pastorius, that kind of stuff. John Scofield, I was really into Medeski, Martin, and Wood too, that kind of. But anyway, I got into the classics too, Miles Davis, Kind of Blue, and John Coltrane's The Love Supreme, all that stuff back then. So I've had those albums, but this was one that he mentioned, and as soon as he mentioned it, I was like, I've got to get that. Don Wilkerson's Preach Brother. Grant Green plays guitar on here. I was introduced to Grant Green by a friend of mine who in high school studied jazz guitar and was really into him, Wes Montgomery, and he introduced me to Grant Green. And yeah, this is killer, absolutely killer. This is a Japanese press. This album, Trip Shakespeare. Dan Wilson and John Munson that were in Semisonic. I always really loved Semisonic's first album. Hannah at Omaha Introvert mentioned this album on one of her videos, and I was like, wow, I really need to give that a shot. And man, I streamed it first, and then I was like, this is fantastic, I got to get my hands on it. Went online and found this original press for like $10 or $12, I think. It's in really good shape, and it's a really good album. A really good album. Really different, unique sound, really influenced by a lot of psychedelia and stuff, and probably like bands from the early 80s, the Paisley Underground bands, but a power pop. This is more power pop, and just a lot of really good guitar work on this album. But yeah, was really glad to never really even heard of Trip Shakespeare before that, so this was really cool. A 10-inch record. This is Sleeper's The It Girl. I'm a big fan of Britpop from the mid 90s. This was a really good album from that period. This was one that you could only get this if you went to one of their shows on tour. I did not get it that way. I got it online. But I just saw it and I was like, that's really cool. And I always liked this album. I had it on CD. Yeah, 7-inch. I'm going to talk about two. Quickly, this one only because it was the first 7-inch that I ever bought, and I don't have a ton of 7. Actually, look, I have more 7-inches than I thought I did. What has happened is a lot of those have come to me as packaged in with the album that I've bought. A lot of recent pre-orders, pre-orders of albums that I've bought that have come out in recent years. They would like include like a 7-inch or something. So I have a lot more 7-inches than I realized, but. This was the first 7-inch that I ever bought purposefully. This is Spoon's 30-gallon tank. It's got car radio and 2 songs that are really good B-sides. Revenge and I Could Be Underground. This is one of my favorites. And I got this around 2002 or so. But yeah, really good. And then this one is a 45. This is one of my favorite songs, and it's You Stole My Love by the Mockingbirds. This is not an original 45. This song came out in 65. I don't know when this was pressed, but I bought a box set some years back of some mod stuff by Immediate Records. It was like a 3 CD set. And this song was on there, and it blew me away. Oh, it's a really, really good song. I'd never heard it before. The Mockingbirds, a couple of the guys in the Mockingbirds went on to form 10cc. So, an album, favorite album to fall asleep to. I don't know if this is a favorite album to fall asleep to. I don't really do that much anymore these days. But at one point in my life, I was having a pretty hard time. Couldn't shut my brain off. You know, I was going through some things. And anyway, nothing worked. I tried sleep exercises, meditation CDs, all kinds of things. And none of it worked. And then all of a sudden, one night, I just had this on and it knocked me out. Literally, well, I mean, it made me go to sleep. Sorry. Come Away With Me by Norah Jones. And it worked, and that just happened to be on the couch. So the next night I tried it and it worked again. I don't know what it is. I mean, it's a really soothing album, that's for sure. But no, I mean, nothing else worked, and this happened too. So yeah, it helped me catch up on some sleep and get back to functioning again. But anyway, yeah. Your favorite VC experience. So again, like I said earlier, I'm new to this. This is only my second video. How about this? Dylan actually sent me a message, DM'd me over Instagram, and said, hey man, there are these people out there in the vinyl community doing this vinyl tag, and I thought maybe you might want to do it. And believe it or not, at the time that he messaged me, I had a stack of these albums I was working on already, putting it together. And so I responded and sent it to him, and that was pretty funny. So that's a VC experience. There you go. Do I have any advice? No, I have no advice, because I just started this. But I've enjoyed the advice that a lot of you guys have given, and I think it's a really cool thing. And like I think I said this in my last video. As I've gotten older, I've kind of lost a lot of the friendships that I had, where we used to just goof off and talk about music all the time and whatever. And I mean, I'm still friends with those people. I'm just saying we just don't do that as much anymore. And our lives have kind of changed and stuff. And so this is a really cool thing, and I hope to kind of do it some more. And I really enjoy watching a lot of the videos that I've seen, and I love talking about music. So hopefully this is something I'll keep up. And yeah, that's it. So yeah, I hope everybody's 2019 is going well, and I look forward to hopefully getting some feedback in the comments, making fun of me for saying 112 million times. But anyway, alright, I don't know how to end stuff, so I'm just gonna end this. Okay, see ya.